Getting compared to Keith Haring will definitely set you into that spiral for
Yes.
differencing yourself. That's, I think, a lot of the reasons too. I just paint so much.
Hi, everyone. Lucie Shearer here, Marketing Director at 934 Gallery. Welcome to one of our artists talk. Today we have Daniel Rona, our artist from September through October, and our featured artist at 934 Fest this year. Today we're going to ask him a couple questions about his experience with the fest and get to know him a little bit better. Before we get started, I just wanted to make a note that 934 Gallery is in fact an all-volunteer, not-for-profit gallery. And if you like the content that you see today, we would love to see you give us a donation. You can go to 934gallery.org. There's a big donate button there. If you just hit that, you can send us $5, $25, $500, whatever amount makes you happy. We always appreciate a little bit of money donated because it allows us to create opportunities for artists to show their work and create great events like 934 Fest and other music series and whatnot throughout the year. All sorts of things happen over at 934 Gallery, and your donations are what make them happen. So if you have a moment today and a couple bucks to send our way, that would be amazing. So thank you. With that, I'm going to move ahead and we're going to get talking with Daniel Rona here. Okay. So Daniel, are you ready for this?
I am, yeah. Hello.
We're gonna ask you all the questions. So people may notice that today's a little different. Normally when we do our artist talks, they are hosted by Lisa Stewart or Andy Meyer, or we've had a couple of other folks in the past, and this is my first one. So I'm a little nervous, but also pretty excited. Reason that I'm hosting today is because I was a featured artist last year in a similar position to what Daniel is in this year. So we kind of wanted to talk back and forth, get that insider scoop for all of you listening. Honestly, the whole reason I got involved with 934 Gallery was because I applied as an artist to do an exhibition and ended up in the slot for the September show in 2019. And I ended up becoming one of two featured artists for the festival that year. So it was myself and Andy Meyer. And I fell in love with the gallery and just started volunteering more and more. And here I am today doing all sorts of fun stuff. So, including this interview. I guess, so I know what my experience was like as a featured artist. It was wonderful and a lot of work, but super awesome in the end. And I guess I wanted to see what your general thought was. What was your big impression? Maybe favorite moment. Give us your story of what it was like to be the featured artist at 934 Fest this year.
Sure, yeah. Thank you. So overall, like as for any artist, I think it's super exciting to even just get an exhibition, but to be named kind of the festival kind of shower and aligned with the festival is also very unique, and it kind of adds to that. I've been excited for it, and I was looking forward to it the whole way through. I think one of the biggest things that kind of threw a stick into the wheel or whatever was that the guy that I was paired with, actually, he dropped out early on, so kind of left me up and left it on my shoulders. So kind of just from there, yeah, just had to pick it up and do my best. But overall, just super excited to be chosen for it.
To go from the expectation of being half of a duo show to all of us in a solo show to fill all that
Oh
space
yeah.
has got to be daunting. I
Oh
don't know if I would have been able to do it.
yeah, it was a little scary for sure, especially because I did enjoy the guy's work I was paired with. So I thought we could have had some cool like read and reacts type deals going on in the show. But no, yeah, I guess it just kind of opened up a spot to have me try harder and show out even more.
Body forms. What was the inspiration behind the body of work? I understand that there's a lot of work in there that talks about being an artist and it's very meta. Can you talk more about, body forms and the whole show? It's your inspiration and whatnot.
Yeah, so body forms originally came about probably last year towards the end of the year. I was kind of working kind of through ways to kind of enhance my kind of approach to art and art making. I've always, since becoming an artist, I've always just wanted to get better. And I think with body forms, especially taking kind of that end of the year in 2019 and kind of just using that as one to keep me out of creative block, but to study on the things in my work that I enjoy or don't like at the moment and would want to change. It kind of started there, and then into 2020, it was kind of just the body forms idea was kind of just building up and up, and I was kind of getting really into like studying just how to paint. So I wanted to add a subject actually to it, and I think I chose body forms for one because it's just one of the things when I started wanting to paint. I thought I'd want to paint like bodies, or I thought I'd want to paint faces and kind of be like a realistic painter, or like some of my inspirations that I look up to kind of even now. But kind of taking that idea and kind of twisting it with where I'm at the moment, and kind of having this kind of own style. I wanted to kind of re-explore that idea of learning body forms, but creating them with my style. So I guess it's kind of just like an entire body of work, kind of exploring the subject of a body. Essentially, I think it kind of boils down to, yeah.
I love that. I love the fact that you're basically making a body of work as you're studying how to create your own style and your own work.
Right.
I kind of wanted to touch upon what you said about always getting better. Um, what kind of techniques or thing, like, do you have any courses that you take, or any artists that you follow or whatever that you use as inspiration to learn and grow?
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to kind of name them off the top of my head, but I'm really interested in uh, honestly the scenes all around the world as far as art goes. There's this really nice YouTuber that he goes around with just his iPhone camera and walks around like all of the highbrow, lowbrow galleries in New York, called James Calm. And so it's honestly probably one of the bigger inspiration sources, where he's going to see for him. He's an artist himself, so he goes and kind of gets inspiration while also kind of sharing these lesser known galleries as and artists that live there and work there. So those have been really inspiring to me. I think also just early on, kind of reading through picture books of my favorite artists like Picasso and Jean-Michel Basquiat was my ultimate number one painting inspiration. He kind of was the one that was like, hey, the effort kind of attitude as far as like just making work, just being that workhorse of ideas that need to get out. Um, and I've always kind of pictured myself in that similar situation, where I've always just had a kind of racing mind, and painting has been able to either grab that or allow me to kind of work through those thoughts. So, um, yeah, I mean, a lot of my inspirations are just from um, either YouTube, or maybe I'll scroll through something on Instagram, and then when I'm painting, I'm kind of like remembering that painting. Like, oh, they kind of use like these variations. Let's see if I can maybe bust something out that's in reference or similar to. And um, I'd say a lot of the reasons I do paint over my canvas is because I'm kind of like studying through things. So in my mind, if they're like too similar, I'm like, we can do better next time or something like that. So yeah, it's always just kind of been a kind of grasp at constant improvement and how much I can do.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I think at least from my perspective as a fellow artist in the community, I've seen your work really grow over the last few years. Since I think I first discovered your work maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Was it that long? Maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But uh,
At the
uh,
back of Blockfort, I imagine.
yeah, yeah.
In
I
the
think
garage gallery. Yeah.
you were doing you did a mural in one of the bathrooms in that
Yes.
space,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Who's this guy? What is this craziness going on?" It was, I liked it because there was a level of like, it had these really interesting little simple characters, but there was a cleverness behind every little interaction that was happening between the little people.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, "Oh, this person's got more going on than just like I draw shapes, shapy people. I
Right.
am doing a terrible job of describing it. I apologize.
No, yeah.
But
I mean, it kind of is.
it's
It comes down to that. Like, it's just figuring out the forms and stuff for me. Like, though, definitely around that time when I was doing kind of those figures, it was a lot
mhm.
more literal, and now it kind of feels a lot more expressive, which I'm digging, and that's kind of why I've pursued this body of work.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a maturity in the work now, and I can definitely see where it went from more of a storytelling, like very literal storytelling, to much more of a um, intuitive story or emotive kind of
Right.
telling.
Yeah, and getting compared to Keith Haring will definitely set you into that spiral for
Yes.
differencing yourself. That's I think a lot of the reasons too. I just paint so much is I'll get obsessed with an artist, or at least when I first started, and then I kind of start painting similar to them, and then it's like, well, shit, now I'm kind of just painting like them, and it's none of me. And so it's kind of finding that balance, and I always choose to go the complete opposite direction
Yeah.
most of the times.
You,
Um,
you never want to get pigeonholed, right? As
oh
like,
yeah,
you're just the guy that does this thing. It's fine. Like, it's in my own work, I've been trying to figure out what's the next direction for me to grow and move towards in my work. And I don't need to go into all that right now, but when you get into the studio, this is the stuff I love getting into. Do you need to warm up before you start painting, or do you do any other sort of like sketching process first? Do you like live in your sketchbook and like what, I guess, what does that process look like for you?
sure. It's it changes up quite a bit, which is kind of weird. There's not really like one pinpoint kind of method that I use. Honestly, I paint when I'm kind of feeling more comfortable, or honestly, sometimes when I'm not feeling as comfortable. Those are two great times to paint for me. Um, and so it's kind of just getting into that work. Actually, it's kind of just taking that first mark, honestly, for me. Like once I kind of get that first mark down, which sometimes I would say comes from sketching. I do fill up a lot of sketchbooks, and I do a lot of like thumbnailing for bigger paintings and such. But it's rare that I'm looking to find some or to create something that I already made in my sketchbook, which is
Mm.
maybe kind of weird. Um, but yeah, I think it's as soon as I just get going, it kind of just doesn't stop for a while, and I can get really sidetracked into it. And yeah, so I would say it's a little bit of both. And especially in body forms, there's some that you can see like my sketches of it like halfway through. So there was like sketches and then the final painting
Mhm.
next to it. So there's a little bit of both that happens, but I would say it's definitely like once I get the first colors on and first marks done, that's when I can kind of pick up where I'm going to be going.
Let's talk about, your process in terms of when you have your painting, how far in advance do you have that planned in your sketchbook? Um, you know, what does that process look like for you once you get in the studio?
Yeah. So when I'm in the studio, I mean, I'm kind of already probably in my mind kind of set like I'm ready to go. I'm ready to paint. This is kind of what I'm doing. And I keep the sketchbook usually pretty tied to my hip throughout, just daily life and lounging around the house or whatever. So I'm always kind of like drawing little bits and pieces of ideas and kind of thumbnailing maybe future paintings and stuff like that. But I guess when I get into the studio, I'm more focused on just doing the actual painting rather than
Mhm.
kind of focusing myself and being limited to a sketch. I think that the sketch is a great place, especially because I mean, honestly, to me, I use it kind of like, oh, it's a mini painting. It's kind of that expression of what I'm thinking, and but just on smaller form, whatever.
Mhm.
So, um, yeah, I leave it pretty open in the beginning, and then maybe I'm kind of thinking about that sketch I did, and then maybe I'll look at it halfway through, or I'll do another drawing about halfway through, and kind of figure out what I want my painting to go from and go to or whatever. Um, I would say also that limiting myself and kind of creating only in my sketchbook with like pen and ink creates a pretty interesting kind of dynamic between painting and sketchbooking, because one's just black and white cross hatching, kind of showing the values, but painting is where the colors really come from. So even when I do sketch, I'm probably envisioning textures and the colors and everything. But when I get onto the canvases, where they're destined to either change or stay.
Very cool. So once you get to that canvas stage, what are your favorite materials to work with?
Right now, actually, probably most of my career, it's been oil pastels. Have usually been like the basis for a lot of my early line work kind of stages, and if I am going from a sketch to a painting, I'm sold on the sketch being the idea, I usually do use like oil pastel or a thinner brush to kind of really get those cross hatchings and other line work that I want to keep from the drawing into the painting. Um, and then I also use latex house acrylic. Um, I don't know why. I think it's just been the cheaper alternative that's been able to keep me painting for kind of a longer time. So um, yeah, I would say those are probably my two main, and then spray paint kind of fills in towards the end. Either I'm figuring out or adding more value, or doing different tricks on my lines or
Mhm.
spattering and stuff like that. So I'd say those three are my main kind of go-tos, is oil pastel, acrylic, and spray paint.
It sounds like those materials are really great for getting a lot of like interesting textures and color variations.
Yeah, I would also say they lend a pretty good hand to that kind of like spontaneous or kind of randomness kind of to my painting, especially the spray paint. You can control it only really so much. I mean, you can do the line weights and stuff like that, but when you get to like the spattering, you're either gonna have to calculate it really well or kind of just live with what it gives you. And um, that's kind of what I've just been doing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a level of like trust in your own paint that I like won't let it have. I'm like, no, you're gonna go exactly where I want you to go. Like
Yeah.
I fight with the paint more than I like get along with it.
I feel that there's definitely quite a bit of that as well. I mean, getting the paint to work how you want it is a pretty big thing, especially maybe it's because of the latex house acrylic, not really meant for probably art projects, but um yeah, no, it's always there's definitely quite a bit of battle between what I want to do. Um, yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. But well, the work is turning out beautifully, whether or not you're fighting with the materials. um, did you have a favorite piece in the show overall?
I want to say either the one that I used for the title card and advertisements. I
Mhm.
want to say that was probably my number one. Um, God, it's always so hard because I guess when I like show a body of work, it's usually all of my favorites. So there's nothing really that's like half done or like needs some work. It's usually I've stopped it, and that's why it's in the show. And so I love them all, but definitely that title card piece, I think,
Mhm.
expresses the idea of body forms a lot, or the most maybe. And there's also a red piece in there that's combined of two that is also one of my favorites that I created that was actually the last piece I created for the show.
So, I mean, you're a prolific artist. Like, you make so much work. Like, would you say that you average like a certain number of paintings a month, or does it happen in bursts? Like,
That's a good question. There's there's a little of both. I want to say there's times, well, especially now, I want to say, without jinxing myself, that I've kind of grasped this idea of kind of beating creative block, or kind of how I've kind of went around creative block. So there's definitely now a little bit more of a consistency, and to where I kind of feel like I have control over if I want to paint or I don't want to paint. Um, but there's definitely times where the burst comes out and I'm doing 10 or 15 in like 2 weeks or so, and then it just kind of goes up and up and from there. But a lot of the times I've caught myself doing that because, kind of this new method I've chosen to get around creative block requires me not to push those extents without knowing like what I want to do. So there's a little bit more of a kind of forethought now, kind of when I'm painting, but burst is nice because I can kind of express a single idea several times very rapidly and um, without too much fight. But
Mhm.
now I've kind of like this kind of more consistent 2 or 3 week kind of really comfortable without kind of stressing myself out on stuff.
Absolutely. So I really want to dig into that a little bit more. You talked about breaking past creative block.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Tell us more. Like, what do you do to get past creative block? I feel
Yeah.
like everyone comes across this and has
Oh yeah.
issues with it and wants to know the secret.
Yes.
What
Yeah.
works for you?
No. So I guess a little background. Like I get quite a bit of seasonal kind of depression, and I kind of deal with depression kind of in everyday life and ADHD and stuff like that. So there's times when things seem better to do than other times, and I've always since art and since kind of becoming more involved in being kind of an artist, I've wanted to make sure like it's not something super unhealthy. So um, I think my biggest, actually probably my first attempt at doing it was back in the end of 2019, just before I was kind of settling on the idea for body forms. I limited myself to black and white, and um, I kind of just thought about the things in my work that I again wanted to either change or see if I could make better. And those things kind of included like composition or value and line work and kind of shapes or forms and stuff like that. So when I was using the black and white, I was kind of not really focusing on an actual subject, just on painting and seeing what I could create from those ideas. So I was adding in a value here and shading with black and white, and then I would add another shade spot, and eventually it would kind of turn into like this entire painting of shapes and symbols and stuff like that that I um, enjoy, because I was just like trying to make my lines better, my shading better, or stuff like that. So really focusing on kind of elements of work over the subject of my work um, has been, I guess, the main thing that's led me to becoming uh, less prone to creative blocks. It's hard to say that I don't get creative blocks, because I mean, there's definitely times where the brush in your hand just does not want to move, um, and I've gotten that quite a bit. It's just that I've kind of created a little system that's allowed me to focus on specific things rather than I need to create a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's the style that when I came into art, that's something I really wanted. I wanted to be good, but I didn't want to burn out. And so just finding a kind of like balance of practicing. Also, not being so much of a narrative painter kind of probably lends a hand to it.
Mhm.
I'm not really focusing on kind of the topics and um, stuff like that that's going in our everyday life, which I think there's kind of a downfall there. But I think all in all, it's kind of just like this, just trying to keep a consistent feeling, like emotional, and yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
No, that's a great point. I like the fact that you kind of dug back down into what it takes to actually make a piece. It's not about the subject; it's about the actual making it.
Right.
What you said, the elements over the subjects. I think that's
Yeah.
great. Um, uh,
I think I
Go ahead.
had too much love for art to just put myself in a space where I'm like not feeling that I don't want to paint. So I always just want to be a painter, and finding that kind of way to do it is that.
I think, yeah, I think the best method for getting around creative block is oftentimes just kind of turning it on its head and like, what is it that you do and how can you do it a little differently
Mhm.
without the pressure of it being something that needs to be consumable at the end. Um, I know one of
Mm,
my struggles is like I always try to make pieces that are like no matter what, they're finished, they're polished, they're ready to go, and they're done. And if it's not, I don't want to make it at all. And so just letting yourself work through the process of making art is so important, you know?
mhm. I think also there's like some sort of kind of symbolic idea behind the creative block, and kind of what it kind of symbolizes. Like, I think for me, it kind of is this like stagnant feeling. So like if I know that I'm getting bored of a series of work, I'll probably end up hitting a creative block sometime soon. So it's always just kind of weeding in and out of that, and knowing when to move on from a body of work, and when
Yeah.
to focus in on it.
Speaking of which, you've made a lot of work this year. Do you feel like the body of work that you created for body forms is kind of done, or do you feel like there's more of that that you can explore at this point?
It's it's interesting because now I like the body forms, but now I'm kind of trying to twist it to where it's more than just body forms. I think I think it's still an alive style for me. I think I'm still pursuing it, of course, in kind of my daily paintings. Um, but now it's kind of just figuring out kind of what's the next step for them, and like how can I either create one or two subjects, or how can I do a scene of people rather than just these body forms on canvas, which I also really like. So there will be a little bit of probably back and forth, I imagine, until I find something new. But um, yeah, I think overall I'm probably going to be continuing it for a little bit longer for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess that kind of leads me to my next question is like, what's next for Daniel Rona? Like, what is the next, series of paintings look like, or what's the next evolution of your life as an artist? What does that look like over the next, couple of years?
Yeah, well, it's tough, but I think I think there's a little bit of space for me to explore kind of my graffiti once as a younger kid, to have my work on a wall, and so pursuing murals is kind of I think leading the charge right now.
Hmm.
But definitely, just a lot more exploration of life and painting itself, and um, yeah, kind of honestly, it's really hard to tell like what what it's going to be like, because I've been so wrong so many times. But I can say right now there's definitely a lot of color going on. Color is staying in, um, and I think also I actually just signed a lease to a Blockfort studio. Um, so that's going to be
Congrats.
very nice. That's going to be probably adding to the inspirations and getting life in a studio type deal. So while I can't really say I don't know, but I'm excited nonetheless. I think I have a couple murals right now, at least I can speak for, that are pretty awesome in the works. So kind of just again pushing myself to becoming even better, and picturing out what I want more accurately in my head, and pursuing art in general. I mean, all of it. I can't wait
Yeah,
for all of it.
just keeping it
Any
going.
opportunity.
That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. So, are there any last words you want to share with the everyone watching your artist talk today? Was there any piece of advice you'd like to give an aspiring artist as a final kind of closing note?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you everyone for watching. I appreciate you guys listening. And if you've viewed the show, I appreciate you taking a look at it, especially in person. I know it's a little tough, but no, it goes a long way, and I really appreciate that. I think one piece of advice, or advice in general, I could give is honestly just one from my former high school teacher: just keep painting. Not necessarily do you have to know what you want to paint, but the act of painting in general is going to make you better, and it's going to get you closer to depicting the ideas that you actually want to paint easier. So um, yeah, just practice, apply for everything you can, get your work in front of people, especially if that's the route you think you're going to go, is you want to show in galleries. So definitely make yourself you know relevant on Instagram and stuff like that. Try tagging and commenting, all that annoying stuff. But no, it definitely gets a long way. So, yep, just keep painting and be you, and uh, I'm sure people will love it.
I love all of this. Daniel, will you share with us a website and or Instagram handle where people can find you?
Yeah, you can find my kind of web store at danielrona.com, as well as my Instagram is Soul Was Here, SOLE was here, on Instagram. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Daniel. And thanks to all of you who tuned in to watch Daniel Rona's Artist Talk with 934 Gallery today. Again, if you liked what you saw, you can leave a donation at 934gallery.org/donate. And if you're interested in seeing Daniel's work, it is still on display today, October 24th, from noon until 3 p.m. After that, it will be coming down, but you will be able to see the work on our website. And yeah, so that's all we had today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks again, Daniel, for participating in this and being one of our amazing artists. We hope to see, you do amazing things in the future. We're sure of it. All right.
Thank you guys.
With that,
Appreciate it.
we're gonna call it a day. All right. Keep painting, right?
Peace out. Keep painting.
Peace out.